New Starfield info keeps on coming. Starfield is only a few days away, and the Starfield devs continue to keep dropping new and exciting details about the game. So I'm going to discuss a mix of new details that you should know, gathered from recent developer interviews, Q&As, discussions, and more. So let's get started. Before we get into the new stuff, let's start off with some general info, then we'll get into the details that we've learned. The standard edition of Starfield will be releasing on September 6th, with the Premium, Deluxe, and Collector's Editions dropping on September 1st with early access. Preloads for Starfield are now live for Xbox players, but Steam and Game Pass players will need to wait until the 30th to preload the game, which is pretty sizable, sitting well over 120 gigabytes of storage space. So let's get into all the new and interesting information that we've learned recently. As we've known, Starfield is going to be absolutely massive and likely to absorb you into the world like very few games can. In a recent Gamescom interview, Pete Hines, Bethesda's head of publishing, said that during his playthrough he was around 80 hours in and still hadn't completed the main quest. He was so busy doing factions and other quests that he hadn't even touched the main story, which I relate to as I did the same thing in Skyrim. Pete described after that 80 hours that he started the main quest and it was like going from quote one game to a different game. He then said he spent the next 50 hours or so playing the main quest once he started it. Pete said that the story is his favorite Bethesda story and ending yet, with him further saying, quote, "This game doesn't really even get going until you finish the main quest." When asked how long it would take to 100% the game, Pete said that he has really no idea how long it would take, mentioning that after 150 hours of playing, he isn't even close to 100%ing Starfield. Along with Pete Hines' Gamescom interview, we also got a Q&A from Emil Pagliarulo and Will Shen on Discord. Within Starfield's world, there will be many opportunities for space piracy and other bad deeds if you so choose. While we knew that cargo smuggling would be present in Starfield, during their Q&A, Emil discussed that there are specific items that are considered contraband pretty much anywhere in the settled systems. One example he gave was harvested organs, which sounds like a joke, but after seeing that neon clip in one of the earlier trailers, I'm not so sure if it was. He continued by saying that you can get special ship modules to hide your contraband goods. He also stated that the game's economy is fixed, but the prices of goods being bought or sold can change based on the skills that you choose in-game. Now, we've seen an example of those skills such as the bargaining skill, which allows you to buy items at cheaper prices and sell them for more. Now, in his interview, Pete Hines also discussed stealing items and hauling illegal contraband, and how you can make a huge income from selling those items. However, you can also get caught and get in some serious trouble. And it's worth noting that Starfield will feature a jail system. So if you get caught committing any crimes like carrying harvested organs, then you may find yourself in jail. However, if you get caught doing certain things, you'll have the classic options of electing to spend time in jail, paying a fine, or resisting arrest entirely. While you can definitely fulfill your space pirate dreams, it appears that Starfield will not be able to be played in a pacifist mode, as both Will and Emil have said that completing Starfield completely non-lethal is just not really feasible, with both devs saying that they can't guarantee that every mission can be completed in a pacifist way without using lethal options, but both mention dialogue as an option to try and avoid conflict. We know that the new persuasion system will play a big part in Starfield, so if you want to try and talk your way out of trouble, then leveling up the dialogue and persuasion skills will be key. Emil also said that there are some non-lethal weapon options for you to use as well. Now, in the past, Will Shen has confirmed that all of the faction quests can be played and completed independently. However, Emil has previously discussed a questline where you can actually infiltrate the Crimson Fleet and play as sort of an undercover agent, sort of playing as a bad guy while maintaining your good guy status. Well, we got some additional information on how that undercover work will happen. The Crimson Fleet storyline will feature you being an undercover agent who infiltrates the fleet on behalf of the UC SysDef, which is a specific military branch of the United Colonies. However, whether you choose to betray the fleet or the UC SysDef is your choice to make, which is a questline that I'm very excited to play and I think just sounds incredible. Starfield will present you with many opportunities for unique experiences due to the game's use of procedural generation and random settlement placement. In his interview, Pete discussed that the set locations, such as the game's large cities, Atlantis and Aquila City for example, will still be in the same place for each player. One really cool thing that Pete said was near the beginning of the game, you're going to get the chance to visit a museum in New Atlantis that helps to detail some more of the game's lore, such as the Colony War, what happened to the Earth, information on the game's factions and religious groups of the world, and more. So it basically sounds like a quick and dirty history lesson of the settled systems. In their Q&A, Will and Emil confirmed that homes will be available for purchase in all the major cities of the game. Some you can outright purchase and others are specific rewards for quests, with Emil stating that you'll get one for completing, quote, something. In the recent Q&A, Emil and Will shared some info on some of those religious groups, as well as relics that we will see from the Colony War. Emil said that the settled systems are home to numerous real-life religions and denominations, but that they really only focus on the 3 new ones being introduced in the game. The first one, the Sanctum Universum, is only a couple decades old in the Starfield timeline, but has risen in popularity. The members are called the Universals and believe that God exists somewhere in the universe, and that a higher power is guiding us all, with them believing that the ability to grav jump is God's way of saying, come find me. Will and Emil describe the enlightened as atheists, who don't believe in a higher power but want to teach humans to take care of each other through humanitarian and community work. The final religious group is known as House Va'ruun, who worships an entity known as the Great Serpent, and apparently they are Emil's favorite as he's gotten the House Va'ruun logo tattooed on his wrist. In Starfield, it's not exactly clear what the truth is about House Va'ruun, but Will described that in the game there are rumors about what this truth is. Essentially a colony set off for a new world, grav jumping along the way. After one of the jumps, one of the passengers said he spent time communicating with a celestial entity known as the Great Serpent, and he brought back a command which was essentially, get on board or be devoured when the Great Serpent encircles the universe. The devs said that House Va'ruun will serve as an enemy group and one that you'll face off against in-game. Emil and Will were also asked about the mechs that we've seen in-game. Emil stated that the mechs are leftovers from the Colony War. He stated that both the Freestar Collective and United Colonies had mechs, but the Freestar Collective had better mastered using them. The UC also had mechs but relied more on controlled alien beasts from their Xeno Warfare division. However, when the Colony War ended, mechs were outlawed, and thus we see them as basically relics of the past located on these different planets. While mechs will be present in the game, and from what Emil has said, there may also be an old mech battleground in game, the mechs will not be usable. As we've said, they are in ruins. During the Q&A, some big information about companions was revealed as well. It was confirmed that there will be over 20 named companions who can join our crew. 4 of them will be from Constellation and will have the most story moments with our character. All the named companions have their own backgrounds, they can follow you around, and can carry your stuff. In his interview, Pete Hines mentioned that companions have different personalities, different attributes, and it matters what actions you take when you are with them. They will react dynamically to those actions, even stating that there are some companions that will think less of you if you do certain activities such as pick locks. Now, each crew member will start with a set of perks that are set at specific ranks. However, those perks for companions do not level up. So it's important to choose companions that have skills that align with what you find useful for your crew. So if you want a companion to aid you in combat, you may want to choose one with the Rifle Certification perk. Or if you want to increase your grav jump, then you might want a companion with the Astrodynamics perk. While companions can't level up their skills will stack with your own, helping to add even more reason to bring them along. Will and Emil also discussed more about hiring crew members for your outposts. When assigning a crew member to work at an outpost, you will need to pay them a one-time fee, which can be negotiated using the speech challenge game. Now, it was previously rumored that you may have to actually pay them a salary, but this was confirmed as not being true, and instead you'll just have to pay them that one-time fee. Pete also mentioned that outside of the 4 major cities, there are still plenty of other large points of interest and settlements that aren't major cities, with their own people and quests to find. These include things like passive locations, such as farming locations where groups of people would grow crops to export to other planets, or star stations and massive ships, which he said might as well be considered cities because they're so large. In space, Pete further discussed some of the random experiences you'll have, such as encountering star stations, as well as various ships, some being derelict or destroyed. And in another recent interview, senior level designer Zachary Wilson discussed some of these encounters, with him discussing that we will have legendary ship encounters, which are huge, high-level ships that will dramatically outclass you in the early game that you'll have to build up to being able to take down. And I'm sure the first time we destroy one of these will likely be a pretty incredible experience. While you can own multiple ships, you're not going to be able to control and fly a fleet of ships that are piloted by NPCs or anything like that, which I've definitely seen discussed on Reddit and around other Starfield forums. So you're going to be able to fly one ship at a time with your crew, and that's going to be how it's going to work. Pete once again discussed your ship as being like another character, where you'll choose the ship that you want to fly, and each one has their benefits and drawbacks, and it'll be up to you to choose the one for the job that you're looking to do at that time. If you want to have a lot of companions, then you're going to need a bigger ship that can haul more people so that you can bring your companions along. If you don't really care about passengers, then you may opt for a simple 2-seater with lots of cargo space. Which, if you're going to be into smuggling in the game, which I feel like I probably will be, you're going to want to have that larger ship with a high shielding capacity and the ability to conceal that illegal cargo and help you make a lot of money. Now, one thing that Pete talked about was that there are various classes of ships in game. When you start out, you're only going to be able to fly Class A ships, which is likely what the Frontier, our starting ship, is. During the interview, he also mentioned Class B and C ships, with C being the highest of the 3 mentioned. Now, whether they go higher than that, I'm not totally sure. Pete said that you can't immediately just jump to flying Class B or higher ships, as you need to go and do activities to level up your piloting and unlock the ability to fly those. That may involve things like space combat, so it'll be useful to plan to unlock and level these skills when you're about to do these kinds of activities. In his interview, Pete discussed something known as mission boards, which is the first time I've actually heard about this for Starfield. They may involve tasks like delivering resources to a certain location or building an outpost on a specific planet. Now, it could also be a mission like a taxi service where you need to take some people to a certain place in the settled systems. Now, in his interview, Pete told a funny story of doing one of these missions from the mission board, where he was doing sort of the taxi service mission where he picked up 2 people to deliver. He then went on to complete some other quests and totally forgot that they were on his ship. So after jumping like 3 systems away and getting distracted with numerous other things, he walked back on his ship and found some people and just wondered what they were doing there. So he finally remembered, he had took up this mission, he got them to the location. Which is just another example of how sort of immersive and engaging that Starfield seems like it's going to be, that there's just going to be so many things popping up that you can do that you're just going to get so distracted doing something else that you're just going to forget all the things that you might have been doing. Now, in both interviews, character creation and customization was something that came up. When asked a question about getting into the game, both Will and Emil emphasized just getting into character design and creating a character that speaks to you. Now, Will provided an example of a character he created, which was kind of like a space trucker, and said that the game supports your choice in creating a character that fits what you want to do. However, Emil said that you can also select an anonymous background if you'd rather do that with no traits at all. Pete discussed the game's skill system some in his interview, which affects your character's playstyle and abilities. He touched on those skills and leveling up and how it's very important that you're thoughtful about which skills you choose. And like I've sort of mentioned earlier with the ship piloting, it's also worth noting that you can't do certain things until you unlock that skill for the first time. If you want to do something like lockpick or use the boost pack, then you're going to first need to unlock that skill. And one thing that Pete really emphasizes is that the boost pack is awesome, and he said you need to try and pick it up as soon as possible because it's so very important. It can be important for getting to different points of interest on planets with low gravity, and sometimes can make you feel like you're really flying. He also mentioned that many people have played Starfield and thought their boost pack wasn't working, but they simply hadn't chosen to unlock the skill for it. Now, Pete discussed a really cool skill that we haven't heard about so far, which is sort of further into the skill tree called Special Projects, which allows you to build and mod special items that you otherwise wouldn't have access to in the game. He said these apply these special projects to your weapons and spacesuits, and he said that at one point during gameplay he felt like Iron Man, flying around with the boost pack and shooting out rockets. So it sounds like Special Projects and the boost pack is definitely going to be skills that are going to have to be must-gets when we get Starfield in our hands. Now, in his interview, Pete Hines also touched on modding and the game's PC performance so far. Bethesda has said that they will be very supportive of modding for Starfield, and Pete further discussed modding in his interview. He said that they would be releasing the creation kit for Starfield just like they've done with Fallout and the Elder Scrolls. However, he did not give a definitive timeline on when that would be. He mentioned that this will include things like creating entire planets, which I can just imagine all the incredible additions that modding will add to this game for many years to come. Now, one thing that Pete said about playing on PC is that you need to pay really close attention to the game's PC specs and ensure that you have the requirements to run the game, specifically noting that you have to have an SSD to run this game. He further went on to say that people who have played the game early on PC have said that the performance is smooth and that people are actually really pleased, with people telling him that even on Ultra the game runs really nicely. And according to an earlier report all the way back in June, Starfield is supposed to have the fewest bugs of any game released by Bethesda thus far. However, we all know that the real test will be when the general public gets their hands on the game and starts breaking all kinds of things in just the most unexpected ways. Then we'll really see how many bugs the game has. I, for one, can't wait to get my hands on Starfield, and I'm so jealous of everyone that's already getting to play it. If you'd like to know all there is to know about the game before it releases, then be sure and check out my nearly hour-long preview about Starfield. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.